Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about preparing a T2202 slip for the 2023 tax year. My name is Sharka Hoida. I'm a CPA, CGA, and a tax analyst with TaxCycle. What we're going to cover here today is where to go in the global options to set up the default items for your T2202 module. We're going to show you where you can set client defaults and footnotes in your file. We're going to create a T2202 manually, and then I will show you how to use the Excel import template tool if you wanted to utilize Excel to set up all of those T2202s. I'll go over the missing slip information template, the review tools, how the workflow tracking works, how to electronically file, and then printing your slips and labels when you're done filing, and if you need to, how to amend a return later. I'm just going to pop over into my screen share. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up into options. So you can get there along the side here in options. I also like to add my options tool at the top, which you can do by clicking on the little down arrow, finding options in the list, and then you can add it up here as well. The advantage of having it here is that it's available to you no matter where you are in the program. So if you need to quickly configure an option, you can do it that way. So if we open up options and we pop in here, the important ones for the T2202 module are down here in transmission. So you want to set up your basic stuff, your contact information up here. And then what you really need for filing is your slips accounts set up here. In order to transmit a T2202 electronically in software, you need what's called a web access code, and what we like to call a WAC. And that is a combination of a business number and then a password that CRA issues that goes along with that business number. It doesn't matter if you use your own business number and web access code or you use that of a client's, as long as the business number is associated with the correct corresponding web access code, it will work. If you don't remember getting your web access code, it's usually issued when the business number is created. If you don't remember getting that, or if you need a new one, you can go to CRA's website and search for web access code online and get a new one there. Okay, so if you need to, you can toggle this little show password to show what's inputted there to make sure that it's the correct information. Now, if you are doing this work for clients and you choose to always use the client's credentials for the account number and web access code, then you can go ahead and leave this blank, and I'll show you where you would enter that in the file to transmit using the client's information. All right, so that is important. And then slip transmitter, so the information that's going to show on the engagement file. So you want to complete this information. And then we also have all of the options that are specific to the T2202. So if I right click, I can collapse all, and then we just go to the T2202 section. So the ones I'm going to cover here today are the file naming. So this is where you can set up how you want your files named by default. If I open this up, so I can set it here globally, that will update all of the years that T2202 is available, which is 21, 22, and 23. Or if I just want to update 2023, I'll just click there and it will only update for the 1 year. And then I also recommend using this adjustment information so that you can keep your files that are adjusted separate from the original filing. Just makes it a little bit easier to track, but that is personal preference. The next item is how you want to set up your new files. So again, I can set it up at the top level or by year. And this is where you're going to set up what you want to carry forward and your default language of correspondence if you want to set one here. Pricing, if you're doing this work for clients, you'll want to come in here and just set up your pricing information so that if you want to, you can generate an invoice directly out of TaxCycle that you can include with your client package. And we'll cover print. So print we have to do by year. So by default, you'll have a number of print options that come with your install of TaxCycle. You can customize these if you want, but at minimum, I would suggest that you come in here and set up your printer preferences for each of these different file copies. So I have to make changes. If you just edit your little printer here, then you can set up all of your defaults for what you want with that client copy. Sorry, this is the CRA copy. And you can set up all of your preferences here. So maybe I want this to go to a particular printer. I can choose which printer that goes to. I can tell it whether or not I want it to take a snapshot when I'm printing this. So if you're paper filing, you might want to go ahead and set this to take a snapshot when you print the CRA copy. And then there's a number of other settings here that you can predefine so that they're always the same every time you go in to create another T2202 file. And then, of course, you can also create a custom print set if you want. You just click on this next available new print set, and then you can drag and drop whatever pieces you want in that print set and save that to use in your file as well. And finally, I'm just going to cover real quick the workflow. So you can set up your workflow. This is the tracking that we do automatically in TaxCycle. Some of these are calculated to be completed when certain actions take place in your preparation. And then other ones have to be manually checked off. But you can go in here and modify this to show the ones that are relevant to you and make the ones that you want to see as required to complete the entire section, or turn everything off if you don't want to track that particular section. Then that is an option for you as well. And then this will keep track of the status of your file, and once all of them are completed, we'll show your file also is completed. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and create our new file. If you created a file last year, you can use the carry forward option, and it will pull all of your relevant details for your client and all of the recipients into the new year. But I'm going to assume that people that are joining me here today are interested in how to create a new one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to click on New. And then it's going to open up an empty file for me. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is go to this info page. So it automatically opens by default. It's also along the side here to navigate to. And the important thing that we need here is a business number. And I'm just, for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to put in all zeros, but you would put in the issuer's account number here for what's going to end up on the slip. And then I have a made-up name for a hair institute that we're going to say is our issuer for this particular institution. And then we need to put in a mailing address. So I'm just going to use something simple. I'm going to say they're in Calgary. I'll make up a postal code. Okay, so now I have my issuer's information. There's a few options here along the side, which you can uncheck or leave as is. What this means is that every new slip I make will by default use this city that I've entered here, or the province if this is left checked. So I'm going to assume everybody that goes to my institute is probably living in the same city and province, so I'll leave those on. And then you need to select the type of school, and in this case it's an other educational institute. And if it's a flying school or club, then you have to complete this second box underneath as well. And if we scroll down here, the next option is our slip defaults. So this is where you would put any kind of note that you want to show on the bottom of every single slip that you create. So this is our global footnote. There's another field on the slip input page where you can put a specific note just for that one recipient, but for everybody to get the same note, you would put it here. Language of correspondence, if you set that up in your options, will automatically populate. I'm just going to put that to English. And then you'll see that it's calculated the tax year for me already, and it's put in today by default as the signing date. I can change that if I want, and whether or not it's going to be paper filed. So if you can, you probably, it's quicker, certainly get processed quicker if you file it electronically. And if you're a preparer that uses e-file, then you will need to be cognizant of the filing penalties if you are not electronically filing according to the limits that CRA has set up. Okay, so I'm going to skip over this because we'll come back to amending slips. And then at the bottom, we're going to put in our contact information. So this is the person who's going to sign the return, who's authorized to verify that the information is correct and ready to file. And we'll say that Sally is the president. And we'll put in some phone number. So we have a way to contact Sally. And then for the contact person, you can say that it's the preparer, or you can choose the signing person, or if you choose other, it'll make all these fields edit, and then you can put some other person's information there if you like. I'm going to leave it as the preparer. That information is going to pull from this engagement worksheet. So here is where you can track if you are working in an office that has the need to track an office ID or a client ID, or if you have official reviewers and managers, then you can fill out this section. This date section ties to our engagement workflow, which I talked about earlier. So if I put in a date here, so we started this today, then if I go to my tracking tab along the side, you'll see that my engagement and planning start date is also updated to show this value that I put in here. And that is the same for all of these other fields. They will tie in to the workflow as well. And there is our legislated filing deadline, which will also show along the side in workflow. A little further down, we have our engagement properties. So the return filing purpose, filing purpose. So in this case, we're filing, but you can also create a planning file or a training file, or you can set it to not filing. This result will, or this particular field will also get read up into Client Manager if you're dealing with a lot of different files. Language of correspondence is how you're going to communicate with your client if you're working for a client. And then this is just a place where you can add notes to yourself that you want to keep a record of for this particular year and possibly carry forward to next year. There's all my information that I dropped in from my options. And this is where, if you're using somebody else's account, you would put that in here, and then you would have to enter their WAC in the transmission window when we get to that point. And if you're using invoicing, there's a section along the bottom to keep track of invoicing, and if there's an address change after you filed that you want to record to carry forward into next year's work. Okay, so now we're going to create a T2202. So if I go into the slip section and I click on T2202, it's going to create my first one for me. If you have a student number, then you can enter that here. The name of the program. We're going to put in here. And then I have a demo SIN number I can use. And this is for Denise. And it's already filled in Calgary and Alberta for me because I set those as my defaults. And so now I have Denise set up, and you'll see that it's updated in the side here so that I can see Denise. And if I hover over Denise, you can see a little snippet of some of the information that I've entered. There's also a field here for email address if you want to keep track of that here. And then the next section is if I'm setting up the first filing, then they'll all be original slips that I want to transmit. But if I need to come back in here and amend or cancel a slip, this is where I'm going to update the field for that. So, but I need to leave that as original. Tax year drops in by default. And then I have the option to exclude the slip or carry forward the slip. So it's set yes to carry forward. And if for some reason I have a student that maybe didn't have any courses in the year, but I want to keep them because I know they're coming back, they're enrolled for next year, then I can just exclude them for filing. And then when I roll the file forward for next year, they'll still be there. And then I can add their information for that particular year. And then next part you're probably familiar with. You're just going to put in the dates for the different sessions that are applicable. 2023. Let's say they go to 04. And let's say this is a part-time student. And then the tuition amount. And let's say that's the only course that Denise took this year. And now I have a slip completed. If I need a footnote only for Denise, this is where I would put that information for that one student. And it will print on Denise's slip for me. Now, the other way to do this is with an Excel import. And to create a template that you can use for that, you would go up to the Data tab and then over to Excel import and click on the little arrow. And we're going to create a template. And in order to do that, you need to have a slip with at least one field completed. Otherwise, this won't trigger. So because I already put some information in for Denise, I get this. And by default, it's going to select all of the fields on my slip that are not calculated. So these are all my edit fields. You'll notice that these ones aren't selected because those are calculated fields. So I can review this and make sure that these are all the fields I need in my template. I can narrow the list down by searching at the top in this search box here, or you can sort by these different columns at the top to quickly narrow down what you want or don't want to include in your template. I'm just going to leave it as the default. I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me where I want to save that. And I believe I created a folder, so we're going to put it here. So that's my template. And it's going to pop up a little window for me so that I can go ahead and open up that template. And we'll put it over here. Now I know this looks a little daunting. The way that this works is it's going to give you an export tab and a sheet 1. The export tab is what TaxCycle reads into the software. So these top 5 rows are important to leave. Each of these rows have to exist. No changes should be made to row 4 or 5, but you can make changes to row 3 to shorten up the names. You can certainly adjust the column widths, whatever makes sense for you there. And then each row underneath from row 6 down will be an individual T2202 slip. So this looks a bit daunting. Some preparers will also use sheet 1 to create a much prettier data entry and then drop in formulas on the export tab to read that data in where TaxCycle can pick it up. I just, for the purpose of this webinar, did not do that. I'm just using the export tab, but I did create already one that was populated, so I'll open that up for you. And so this is what it looks like with data. So I've already added in the student number, the course, their social insurance number, names, etc., all the way through to all of the different courses they've taken, in which sessions, and the amounts of applicable tuition. So that's already entered. If I close this, and I'm just going to clear this window, now I can go, that my Excel template is completed, I can go now and import Excel worksheet. And I'll go to my folder again. And if I just click on that, TaxCycle is going to read in all of those other students that I had in my worksheet. So you can see now I have everybody in here that I had on my Excel worksheet, as well as the one I entered manually. The little icon along the side is a yellow starburst, and that's how you know that it was imported from another source. This little icon that's blue is you can tell that's our symbol for a manually created slip. And then there's also some little extra information here as well. This means there's some data missing, but I wanted to show you that before I go and correct that, in our correspondence section down here, I'll just close slips so you can see it better. In the correspondence section down here, there's a M letter template. If I click on that, it's going to generate a letter here that I can use to identify which of my students is missing information on the slips. So this is a really quick way to identify what additional information you need to request from either your client or from the students if you're the institution preparing these slips. There is also the option up here in the data tab to carry forward an XML. XML is the file format that TaxCycle uses to transmit to CRA the data that's in your file. So if you happen to have last year's XML file, then you can also carry forward the XML and bring the data into the slip return as well that way. So next we were going to talk about tracking your engagement and workflow. So we did come over here for the dates related to engagement. I'm just going to open up the engagement section again. And if you click on track along the side, you can open or close the various sections. There's an option to click waiting on clients. So if you sent out that missing information letter, you might want to click this, and then it will send that up to your client manager as well, so you know which files are waiting and which are not. There's also the option to add a note here if you want, along with that message to keep in your workflow. And you can also add notes to each individual task as well if you want to keep track of something related to those items. Now, I simplified my workflow for this webinar, so we're just going to say we did send an engagement letter, and that's signed and on file. We got all of our source documents, and we've completed all of our data entry. And I'm going to say we had our first review. So then the next piece would be to get our client approval or authorizing signature to go ahead and file. Now, I can't quite do that yet because I'm going to have to go to the review tab because I am missing some information. And we're going to have to go through these reviews and clear them before I'm able to file anything. So we're going to go click on the little blue link here that tells us that I am missing an address for one of my students. So once I add that information, that cleared a bunch of my review messages. So I have one more here for another postal code that's missing. And then now that is cleared as well. So you want to make sure that all of your review messages are cleared. And once that is done, you reviewed your file and you have authorization to go ahead and file, then you're ready to transmit. What somebody reviewing the file might want to do before transmission is to look at some of the summaries just to verify that the data is correct. So if we come in here and we go to our summary section, there is a slip summary. This is every single slip that we just entered. It's just showing you a different view of that slip entry form. And if I make a change here, it will also update the corresponding slip at the same time. So you can also use this as a quick entry option for your slips if you prefer to data enter in this format. If you're missing some columns, you can just go up to the top. If you right click in the top, you can manage your columns and add anything that you're missing that you want to add here to your form. So if I want to also show country for whatever reason, I can do that. It's going to add it at the end, but you can move it around to wherever you want it in the list. I'm going to leave it there. You can also change your orientation because this is also a printable summary. So if you print it, you can save that with your package in your archives. And now if I update that, it's going to add my country column, and then I am all set to go. Similarly, we have, not similarly, so we also have the summary for the T2202, the tuition summary form. So you want to just double check that this is filled out. We have the correct number of slips showing and our tuition payment total matches what we're expecting. And then this will show whatever footnote from the info page. And you can see there's this little blue triangle here. So if I double click on this field, it's going to take me to the source, which is from the info worksheet where I showed you earlier that you can enter that footnote that will land on every single slip. So now we've reviewed the file. We're happy that the content is correct. We can go to the transmit pane. And file our slips. So you'll see that it's ready to transmit. If I click on the little arrow here, I'm going to see that I have 21 original slips to transmit. If I transmit now, it's going to open up my window to connect to CRA. It's going to take a minute to load. And we see along the side what information it's using for filing. So it's pulling this from my options where I have it set up. This is a link to the temporary file that TaxCycle has stored for me. And then when I'm done with the submission, I can click this little record submission and close, and it will scrape the submission number for me and store it in my workflow. So you're going to come to this page, you're going to read the disclaimer, and if you scroll down to the bottom and click I agree, then you'll go through the process of submitting this particular return electronically to CRA. I'm not going to do that because we don't have a test site for this, so I'm just going to close out of this and go back to my file. We'll save that in here. And if I go to my track, I'm going to just cheat and put in a confirmation number here. And now if I go to my transmit, it will show that I have successfully transmitted my T2202 to CRA. So now that it's electronically filed, the next thing I want to do is print the slips for everybody. So I'm going to go to my print tab along the side, and there's only the option to print 2202s up here, but you'll see I have to click here. If I go back to amend or cancel slips, this is where I would toggle to see those other slips. I only have originals, so I'm going to stay here. I don't need to print a CRA copy because I have electronically transmitted, but I will need to print a recipient copy and probably an issuer file copy to keep for our records. To print all of these at the same time, I'm just going to edit my preferences. And I've already set this up ahead of time. So for the purposes of my demo, I've chosen to send these to a PDF. I'm saving them in that desktop file folder that I created. I'm not emailing them out, although if you have a client or desktop email client, that is an option. Although CRA has specified this year that you do need to get explicit authorization from the recipient in order to be able to email them their slips this year. So more than likely you'll want to share this in either some sort of secure online portal or mail them a hard copy. I've predefined the slip name for my PDF files. So I'm putting in the name of the slip, which is T2200, the return year, which will pick up 2023, and then the name of the recipient. If you want different fields here, if you click on the little down arrow, these are all the fields that are available to use as part of that file name. And need to close that. You can add a password if you like to the PDF file. In my case, I've set it to none. And then you also have the option to take a as filed snapshot, which I have set to yes. So what that means is that it will take a snapshot of my file. And then if there are any changes made down the road, or I need to amend, it will give me a starting point and will show me any changes from the original as filed slip file here. I've set to mask the first 5 digits of the social insurance number, so those won't print. The language is default, and then this will just add a little label at the top of your printed forms. Along the side, I've selected to prevent editing and to create one file for each recipient. So it's going to create a separate PDF here for each individual student in my file. And I've also selected to publish to SlipSync. What that does is it will create a XML file, essentially, of all of the slips here. And then if I'm also preparing personal tax returns for these students, when I put in that social insurance number in a T1 file, it will go look to see if there are any SlipSync slips available and ask if you want to import them. So if you're also doing T1s, then that will save you a little bit of extra keying. You can select to include instruction pages or not. I'm leaving them on because these are our recipient copies. And then you have the option to create additional tasks. So this is tied back to the workflow, and I've got it set up to mark return completed as a completed task when I print the recipient copy. So now if I click Generate PDF, it will go ahead and start printing all of those copies for me along the side. And you'll see in my folder that it is now adding an individual PDF using that file naming convention that I defined in my print set. And from here, I'll be able to share these securely with my issuer or with the individual clients wherever I'm sharing that data with those students. The other thing you might want to do if you're mailing these, so if I've printed them to a paper copy for my students, there is also a tool to print labels. So if you go to the Client tab, you can print labels. So if I click on that, I have selected to use this Avery mailing label. I noticed that this isn't there out of the box, but you can certainly copy this over, and I've put in a note to add this to this particular module. So it should be there in the next release. But now and then set up your label printer over here. I've set it up to PDF, but you probably want to set it up to go to whichever printer is printing those labels for you, where you have it loaded with the correct forms. And then once you've got that all organized, you can just print labels and it will go ahead and generate a label for you that you can use to mail out your copies. And I will tell you, I didn't show it to you in the demo yet, but you can also share with client through tax folder. If you print to PDF and you're using our tax folder product, then that is another way that you can go ahead and send or share your slips with your clients. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was invoicing. So if we go back to our Prepare tab, we've now finished filing, we've printed all of our copies. We'll come down to our billing section and we'll go to our billing worksheet. And I didn't predefine everything, but if you do predefine all of your information, this will drop in automatically. You can set a price per T2202 in options if you like, but I've got 21 of those, and let's say I'm going to make them $5 a piece. And then I have some base preparation fee. Prep. Let's say that is $150. One. And then there is my invoice. You can also add an administrative percentage or amount. Disbursements, if you want to pass through charges for envelopes and stamps and such, option to add a discount. And then your sales tax is also set up in the options as well, or you can select it manually here. And then you can add this client invoice template, which is a much prettier version of the billing template that you can share with your client for the billing if you are charging this work to another party. And finally, we were going to talk about amending a return. So if I go back to my info, I'm going to start by coming in here and I'm going to add a explanatory note for the amendment. So maybe I missed a student. Let's say missing session. And then I'm going to go to the slip or slips that I want to amend. So let's say we want to amend Carol. I'm going to go up to the type of slip. I'm going to select amended, or if I need to cancel it, canceled. And then I will go ahead and make the change. So maybe there was another session here that got missed. So now I've amended my slip. And if I go to the transmit pane and select dismiss results, then I can go ahead and transmit now that amended slip that I just updated. And that is all there is to it. So pretty straightforward. Thank you for joining me here today. I hope you found this information useful, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Take care.